So I just finished the Xbox E3 game showcase, and I'm disappointed that I watched it. I think, it's all personal opinion, but personally, I'll give you some of my thoughts. And basically, I feel like I wasted my time. Like I should have just watched someone else recap it or listened to someone else recap it. It was like, how long was that? Jeez, there was the pre-show. I didn't watch the pre-show, but just the main showcase was like an hour and a half, something crazy like that. And there was a ton of games shown. There was like 30 games, I think, in total shown that they said. And they were marketing how many different games they have and how diverse they are. But even just because you have a lot of games, just because they're diverse, doesn't really mean squat when we don't have, or when, in my opinion, it feels like I can't really put my confidence in Microsoft. Microsoft never has been the most reliable, but this really started to bite them in the butt in the 8th generation. In the original Xbox days, of course, they were starting out, so they couldn't have had any kind of solid IPs, but they did the best they could, right? They had a deal with Sega where they were able to make sequels to a lot of Dreamcast games that were originally going to come out. They had Sega publish a number of games for them, etc. It was like 10 different games, right? There was like ToeJam and Earl 3, Crazy Taxi 3, Gun Valkyrie, so on and so forth. And that, in a way, kind of helped give them those solid titles, in my opinion, for the original Xbox. Those, what would you call it? Those core titles that helped carry the console. And along with that, they started establishing the groundwork for many series that could have continued onwards. Some did, some didn't. Of course, we had Halo, Mech Assault, things like that. Bloodwake has a lot of potential and could have became a series. Quantum Redshift was like their F-Zero. Despite that being their first console, they had like Jade Empire and all sorts of things like that. Crimson Skies. They had so many games and titles that could have continued onwards and been their big IPs. And the big problem was that with the Xbox 360, they threw a lot of that away, and they kind of continued on with Forza, continued on with Halo, and got Gears of War. And then they continued on with those, and they've basically burned their bridges. They pushed those into the ground. We kept getting Gears of War after Gears of War after Gears of War, all very similar games. Halo, same thing. And after Bungie left, they had a company that doesn't know how to make those kinds of games, didn't understand what Halo's story was all about, drive Halo into the ground. Forza, they did over and over and over again. Forza Horizon was supposed to be a breath of fresh air, and it was a new horizon for the series, but it was only a new horizon the first or second time. When you do it 5 times now, they're on to the 5th Horizon game, it gets tiresome, man. There's not enough differences. And this showcase really showcases that. Crackdown, right? They brought down Crackdown and they burned that bridge. They had the potential to bring back a IP that was established, an IP that had a somewhat of a fan base, not a huge one, sure, but had an established fan base. They had the potential to continue the series onwards, and if 3 was successful, if 3 was what it was supposed to be, what they promised it would be, and they didn't flat out lie, which they did. People say, oh, well, no, they didn't exactly. Well, they did, though. Right? That they said that the game would be something that it wasn't. They showed something that it wasn't going to be, and sure, it said down below that it was whatever pre-alpha footage, and it's subject to change. So technically, they can't be sued or anything like that. It's their right to change the game. But the point, nonetheless, is that people were sold on something that they didn't get, and not enough of the game was shown to be. A lot of what the game became wasn't shown very much before it came out. And it was delayed a million times. Hype kept going through the roof, and when it finally came out, it was a product that they didn't advertise to you. Sure, they didn't lie because they can get around stipulations like that because, well, it was pre-alpha footage, and they just stayed silent on some of the things that changed and didn't tell people. But staying silent and not correcting misinformation that's out there is just as good as lying when you have people expecting a product that you've been hyping up for 6 years. And instead of trying to rekindle these other series that they haven't burned their bridges on, or try and reignite those, it seems like they're going in a weird direction. It makes sense because, in a way, it makes sense for them, right? I'm not saying Xbox is going to fail. Obviously, it's not. Microsoft has a huge amount of money, and they can just continue throwing money at the wall to see what sticks. But I feel like that's not a good strategy in terms of gaining like lifelong followers or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if that's really the right term, but in terms of gaining respect, I feel like doing what they're doing, which is having 30 games of all sorts by random developers of all different quality and just throwing it all on Game Pass to try and get people to subscribe to their service may be financially successful, but I don't know if it's really good overall for the brand. Maybe it will be, but personally, it's not something I want. Sony, sure, Sony doesn't experiment enough. You could argue Sony has maybe rested too much on certain series. I could see people arguing, for how long, certain, and like some, you could say that a lot of their titles are very similar, third person, exploratory action titles, with Uncharted and Last of Us and God of War, all following, they're all different, sure, but they're all that third person, very narrative heavy action title. And you're like, oh, Xbox has such variety, and that's true, but it's really hard for me to get behind random games that we don't know much about. So much of this was cinematic trailers, so much of this was just weird, all over the place, right? Tonally, just crazy. You go from Flight Simulator, okay, that looks cool. That's been on PC in 2020, I think is when it came out, but it's going on consoles. That looks cool. Okay, I wonder how good it'll perform. How good it will perform. How it will be controlled. Oh, they're not going to talk about it. Okay, they're just going to show it for a minute. Okay, well, that all they showed was just footage of the game that we've already seen before because it's been out for a year. Okay, that doesn't tell me anything new. Oh, now we're moving to a game that we've heard about for the past 2 years. And then we move to another title, some random multiplayer game that looks janky, and then we moved to some what was it, there was one game that was like Metroidvania kind of looking, I don't know what it would be, hack and slash, 2D kind of environmental storytelling kind of title, and then they hop to another game that's like isometric, and it's like every 10 minutes the game repeats. It's like on a 10-minute loop or whatever, and they look like interesting ideas. These are interesting concepts, but why are they doing this just because they want to throw things on Game Pass? Because they want to, that feels like that's it, right? Feels like they don't care about Xbox. It feels like they care about getting people to subscribe for a $10 service and not letting go because games are constantly being pumped out. Who cares about quality, right? And that really seems like that's their plan of action. And I feel like, once again, if this could be beneficial for their, for their pocketbooks, maybe this will be a massive success. But what happens when people get tired of that? I feel like people will get tired of that eventually, right? Am I wrong? Maybe they won't, but it feels like, again, it's quantity over quality. There's a few titles, you could say, some of the stuff by Bethesda, Elder Scrolls 6, and whatever, Starfield, you could say, are going to be the Outer Worlds 2, could be some of the core titles, but even those are games that people, I don't know, maybe it's just me. If those are your core titles, then that's great, and that's the closest thing we have to core titles, but do they really seem like they're still using an engine that's, how old is the engine by this point? 2008 was when the engine was first game the engine used. It has been used for since 2008, like 15 years. This engine has been stacked on top, new features and things like that have been stacked on top of this engine time and time again. I hope this is apparent. It's become a running joke at this point that Bethesda games are buggy as hell and have technical problems. I feel like this, even if you're super excited for these new titles that Bethesda's coming out, these titles that I said are basically the closest thing we have to core titles by them, you can't tell me this is new. Come on. I really would love to be excited for these. Personally, I'm not, but even if I was, you can't tell me that this is like on the same level as what Nintendo or Sony is coming out with in terms of core titles. On the one hand, you have new Mario titles, new Zelda titles that are pushing the boundaries for their respective series. With Sony, you have these, sure, they may not be pushing the boundaries necessarily, but you have these extremely technically advanced and blockbuster titles that are expanding a ongoing story that people are invested in. You know, do people play Elder Scrolls for some kind of deep lore? Not that I know of. Even if they do, like how many people really do, I don't know. And again, it's like, are we ever going to get, is Bethesda ever going to fix their engine? Are they ever going to get a new engine, redesign it, and fix their games, man? I don't know. Bethesda, when they bought out Bethesda, that was kind of my worry, was that they already were on kind of a downward spiral as it was. And if Microsoft is only, if their plan really is to just throw out whatever they can onto Game Pass, buying companies that are already on, like, Bethesda's already on a downward spiral. They buy Bethesda out. They tell them to pump out games. If they're not going to fix Bethesda, the problem's either going to be just as bad, or it's going to get worse if they don't care about fixing things. And it doesn't seem like Microsoft cares about fixing Halo. It doesn't feel like they care about fixing Gears of War and reinventing it. It doesn't feel like they care about reinventing anything. It feels like all they care about is getting out more and more titles as fast as they can, seeing what sticks, hoping they get a big success, and throwing it on Game Pass. And that may work for them once again in the short term. In terms of people paying, $10 a month to play these games, but are they going to actually be able to continually rake in enough money to warrant having 30 games in development all at once? Are they going to be able to continually have people that are dedicated to buying their hardware? Right? Why would anybody buy an Xbox at this point if you can play all this stuff on PC? You can play this stuff on your phone. Soon you might even be able to play it on your Switch and through cloud services on your TV and stuff. And maybe Microsoft doesn't care, but as a fan of their hardware, as a fan of what they've been doing in the games industry and their old IPs and the companies that they have underneath their belt. A lot of the people left, sure, but it's sad to see things going the way it was. And yeah, that's basically the gist of that and what I feel on that. But not everything looks horrible. I definitely want to pick up Halo Infinite, as long as it's not, buggy as heck, and as long as like the frame rate is at least somewhat solid on the original Xbox One consoles. And if so, I'll pick up that, I guess. Might even pick up the new Forza Horizon game, just to give it a shot. But at best, again, it's like at best they're redoing the same thing they've been doing for a long time now, and in a lot of regards, especially with Halo, they're doing it worse than what they did before. And at worst, that's at best, right? Those are their core titles. At best, their core titles are things we've seen a million times over again and have inherent problems that they don't care about fixing. And at worst, it feels like they're throwing things at the wall, seeing what sticks, and don't care about quality. It seems like they don't care about these new titles they're pushing out, and looking at the graphical quality of because that's all we can judge it by currently, these new titles. Looking at the graphical quality, looking at the way that they're displayed, and on the the way that they've been shown off. Some titles that are coming out this year that have 40 seconds dedicated, 30 seconds dedicated to them, barely any gameplay shown. The gameplay that we see is not very graphically impressive at all, and the gameplay that we see looks like something that you can get on Steam for $10. Not bad, but I mean, like, this is the best you got. This is what's going to compete with Sony. This is what's going to compete with Nintendo. I don't know. If you like this, then you could subscribe, and I might do more of this in the future. Especially tell me if you like it down below so I know. But also, I do these kind of audio recordings on my Discord all the time. This is what this video was originally going to be. It wasn't going to be a video. It was actually just going to be audio uploaded to Discord. But it was long enough. I thought it was interesting enough, so I decided to make it into a video. So if you liked it, tell me down below. I'll do more of it. And also, check out all the different audio clips I have all over my Discord server. I talk about a bunch of different things with a bunch of other people, and it's a lot of fun. So join me over there. The link is in the description below, and thanks for watching.